Hi again. This section is about the liver. You guys have done a lot of reading this week about the functions of the liver. There are quite a few different functions, and what I want to do is to actually show you how those functions get performed in terms of the organization and the structure of the liver. So the liver is this organ here on the left. It's quite a dense, thick organ, and it's the largest one in our body. It takes up the majority of the upper right quadrant, right below the diaphragm, and the stomach sits about right here underneath it. So the way the liver is organized anatomically is in these hexagonal structures, and within these structures the actual cells, called the hepatocytes, are arranged in leaflets or sheets that kind of spiral out around that center, this central vein. Now, one way to think about this would be if you took a textbook and you opened it up all the way, and then you carried that one cover all the way to the back side to the other. You would have this display of all of these pages that are all spiraling or radiating, I should say, around this central spine of the book. And that's really how these are organized. So you can see all of these rows of hepatocytes that are all radiating out from this central region. Okay, so what happens is that your body is actually delivering blood into each of these structures through two specific vessels. One is going to be through the actual hepatic artery. That is simply a branch from the aorta that's delivering oxygen-rich blood to the liver. So we're going to be oxygenating the tissue, and we're also circulating it here through the liver for filtration. But the other interesting thing is that we have this other vessel, sorry, not that one, this one right here. I apologize. This one is called the hepatic portal vein. And this hepatic portal vein is actually coming from the small intestines. So we were just talking about all the absorption that happens in the small intestine. Well, you have arteries, you have intestinal arteries that are delivering blood to the small intestine. Okay. Now, these arteries branch into arterioles and then into capillary beds, right? And that's where the oxygen exchange happens. So that's where oxygen is delivered to the small intestine cells. That's where CO2 is picked up. But also, if you remember, absorption of nutrients is a major part of what happens in the small intestine. So here in these capillary beds, we're not only picking up carbon dioxide, we're also picking up nutrients and everything that's been absorbed through the digestive tract. So at the end of the capillary beds, we know that we end up making our way into venules and then into the intestinal veins. But what happens is that instead of just going back into the vena cava, these veins merge into what are called the hepatic portal vein. And this hepatic portal vein it's kind of a bypass. It's a way that all of the blood that's coming from the small intestines, which includes all the nutrients and everything that's been absorbed from the lumen of the intestines, that it actually gets filtered through the liver before it enters into the rest of the circulation. So we're bringing oxygen-rich blood through the hepatic artery, but we're also bringing oxygen-poor, so oxygen-poor but nutrient-rich blood into the liver. And as the blood flows through, these big open spaces are called sinusoids. They're basically like large capillaries with really leaky walls. So blood just seeps through in between all of these layers or all of these sheets of hepatocytes. And as the blood passes by these hepatocytes, then the hepatocytes are able to do their job. So they're able to detoxify any drugs or alcohol that's being carried in, that's being absorbed through this hepatic portal vein. They are able to pick up excess glucose. Remember, hepatocytes are important. The liver is important for storing excess glucose in the form of glycogen. We also can store extra amino acids, and we're also going to be delivering oxygen and picking up CO2. So all of these normal functions are happening as the blood comes through these two vessels and then just seeps in between all of these hepatocytes and makes its way to this central vein. Now, on the other hand, one of the other major functions of hepatocytes and the liver is the production of bile. So while oxygen-rich blood is going this way, and oxygen-poor but nutrient-rich blood is going this way, we actually have the production of bile that's going the opposite direction. So bile is moving into these collecting vessels here that make their way into the bile duct so that it can then move into the duodenum. Now, just to make it clear really quick what bile actually does, excuse me for that, let me charge my battery. Alright, bile is actually going to help with mechanical digestion of fats. So it's not doing chemical digestion, but simply mechanical. And all that means is that it takes a big glob of fat and it helps break it down into smaller pieces, smaller globules, so that the lipases, which come from the pancreas, can actually break it down. So the way it does this is that the bile actually has, it's similar in structure to the phospholipids that we talked about at the beginning of the chapter, beginning of the year, how they had a polar and a nonpolar region. Well, the bile molecules have a nonpolar region here that binds to the fat. And then they have this polar region that interacts with all the water that's found in the chyme. So all the fluid that's a part of the food that we eat is mostly made of water. So that's a watery environment. And the fat tends to want to just clump together. But if it does that, then there's a really small surface area for the lipases to actually break it down. So by having the bile in place, it helps to distribute the fat into smaller pieces floating around in this watery environment. And when it does it, then all of the little lipases, the enzymes secreted by the pancreas, all those lipases actually have more access to more of the fat so that they can break it down chemically. So bile is actually part of mechanical digestion, oddly enough. The lipases are the part involved in chemical digestion.